I made a little bit of money. I don't have 50 million to bet with you, but I do have 3 million to bet with you. So this is your offer.
Jake Paul has stirred up a storm in the world of boxing, but it seems like his latest move might have been one too many. The self-proclaimed boxing prodigy is no stranger to the limelight, and he's made a name for himself by taking on opponents who aren't exactly seasoned boxers. However, when faced with the opportunity to fight Andrew Tate, a former kickboxing champion known for his brash demeanor and unpredictable fighting style, Jake Paul hesitated in a way that made even his most loyal fans raise an eyebrow. In fact, Jake not only turned down Tate's challenge, but flat out rejected a $3 million wager for the fight, leading many to question whether Jake is more about spectacle than real competition. So, what's really going on here? Is Jake Paul scared of facing someone who might actually challenge him? Or is his boxing career just a calculated move to make money while carefully avoiding dangerous fights? Let's break down the details, explore the motivations behind Jake's decision, and understand why people like Joe Rogan and Andrew Tate are calling him out on his strategy. It all started with Andrew Tate, who has made a name for himself both as a controversial internet personality and a former kickboxing champion. Tate is known for his larger-than-life persona and blunt, no-holds-barred commentary, but his challenge to Jake Paul wasn't just another internet rant. Tate made a direct and public offer, $3 million for a fight with Jake Paul, with the added caveat that the fight could happen anytime, anywhere. Tate didn't hold back in his challenge, saying, "You want to fight, you want to send a contract, send one to me. I will take a few weeks break from my retired life to kick the living out of a goofy entitled __ like you." The offer was bold, and Tate's message was clear. He was willing to put his own money on the line with the aim of exposing Jake Paul for what many, including Tate himself, consider a manufactured career. He even added a sarcastic jab, urging Jake to Google his name if he didn't know who he was. Tate's challenge had all the ingredients for a real showdown, two men with different fighting backgrounds, huge egos, and the perfect platform to draw in millions of viewers. However, instead of stepping up to the challenge, Jake Paul turned it down. And not just in the typical way one might reject an offer, he outright dismissed it, along with a $3 million bet. Instead, Jake's team went silent, and the internet buzzed with questions about why he didn't take the fight. Was it fear? Or was it something more strategic? Jake Paul has built his career on selecting opponents who, for the most part, are either past their prime, inexperienced in boxing, or simply not boxers at all. His matches have mostly featured former athletes from other sports, including basketball players and retired MMA fighters, none of whom have the extensive boxing backgrounds to pose a serious threat to Jake. But why this strategy? It's simple. Jake is playing the odds. By picking opponents who are either not specialized in boxing or well past their peak, Jake increases his chances of winning while minimizing the risk to his reputation. Take his fight against Ben Askren, a former MMA fighter who, despite his martial arts credentials, was hardly known for his striking ability. Jake knocked Askren out in the first round. Then came the fight with Tyron Woodley, another former UFC champion whose knockout power was much more well known, but who was also not in his prime and had never been known as a world-class boxer. Jake won both of these fights, and in the process made significant money. But these wins weren't really against real competition in the traditional sense of boxing. In the world of real boxing, opponents train specifically to become boxers, and they dedicate their lives to mastering the sport. These fighters may have backgrounds in other combat sports, but they aren't true professional boxers, and that's where Jake's pattern becomes clear. He's fighting people who are less likely to beat him, but who have enough name recognition to sell tickets and generate pay-per-view revenue. This carefully crafted strategy has allowed Jake to call himself a professional boxer without ever stepping into the ring with anyone who could truly test his skills. It's a business move that's paying off for Jake, but it's also a move that many people, including Joe Rogan, have criticized. Joe Rogan, the famous UFC commentator and podcaster, is no stranger to calling out fighters for their actions inside and outside the octagon. When it comes to Jake Paul, Rogan has been quick to point out that while Jake may have been able to win his matches, he's doing so by cherry-picking opponents who pose no real threat. On a recent episode of his podcast, Rogan expressed his thoughts on Jake's boxing career, noting that while he can't deny Paul's accomplishments in terms of drawing crowds and making money, he's hardly fighting legitimate competition. Rogan put it bluntly, stating, "He's fighting old guys," referring to the fact that most of Jake's opponents are either past their prime or completely out of their element in boxing. Rogan's commentary goes beyond just Jake's choice of opponents. It's about the authenticity of Jake's entire boxing career. When Jake Paul is facing off against people who have little to no professional boxing experience, the wins don't hold the same weight. Rogan argued that Jake's whole persona as a boxer is based on picking fights he knows he can win, not on the merit of his skills or true competition. In the case of the Andrew Tate challenge, Rogan believes that Jake didn't take the fight because it was a risk he couldn't control. Tate, unlike Jake's previous opponents, is a true combat sports veteran. He may not be a world-class boxer, but his kickboxing experience gives him a unique advantage in the ring. Moreover, Tate's unpredictability and his dangerous style are qualities that Jake Paul might not be able to prepare for, something that makes the challenge a true test of his abilities. Instead of accepting Tate's challenge, Jake Paul pivoted to another big fight, one against the 57-year-old retired boxing legend Mike Tyson. Tyson, despite being a global icon and a former heavyweight champion, has not been in his prime for decades. The Tyson fight, therefore, was seen as another carefully chosen spectacle that gave Jake a clear edge. Tyson may have the name and reputation, but his age and lack of recent fighting experience made him an easy target for Jake to face without risking the kind of embarrassment that a fight with Andrew Tate might bring. The Tyson fight was a safe move. Jake got to fight a legend, sell a ton of tickets, and further cement his position in the limelight without facing the unpredictability of someone like Tate, who is in fighting shape and eager to prove himself. This decision underscores the pattern that many fans and pundits are beginning to notice. Jake Paul isn't taking on serious competition unless it's someone he can control. So why didn't Jake Paul take on Andrew Tate? It seems simple: fear. While Jake may not publicly admit it, the threat of losing to a fighter like Tate, who is active, in shape, and unpredictably dangerous, is far too great. Fighting Tate would mean putting his undefeated record on the line against someone who has nothing to lose, someone who could potentially end Jake's career in front of millions of viewers. In contrast, fighting someone like Mike Tyson, despite his name recognition, was a risk that Jake could afford to take, because Tyson was more likely to be a shell of his former self than a serious competitor. Jake Paul has built his career on controlling the narrative, carefully choosing opponents who won't risk his brand. But in doing so, he's built a reputation for avoiding legitimate competition. The $3 million offer from Tate could have been Jake's chance to prove that he was more than just a YouTuber turned boxer. Instead, by rejecting it, he may have confirmed to many that his career is about cashing in on spectacle rather than competing against real fighters. The world of boxing, and especially celebrity boxing, is changing. But until Jake Paul steps up and faces real challenges, fights that test his skill, heart, and character, he will always be known as the man who avoided a true challenge in favor of spectacle. Whether that's good for business or not, it's hard to say, but it's clear that the future of his boxing career will depend on the kind of fighters he's willing to face and the risks he's willing to take.